Hello and welcome to another episode of Wet Liberal Whenever. Now, I heard this quote recently. I think someone may have tweeted it to me, and I've heard it mentioned once or twice recently, which has kind of annoyed me. It's kind of an annoying thing, but in a lovely, gentle way. The quote, I believe, comes from Winston Churchill originally. Great old Prime Minister of this country, saw us through the Second World War. Marvellous man. And the quote was, if you're not a socialist when you're 19, you have no heart. And if you're not a capitalist by the time you're 29, you have no brain. I mean, it's kind of annoying and patronising and knowing, isn't it? You can imagine some old fart like me trying to put down an idealistic young person, you know, and try and crush their idealism by going, well, by the time you get to my age and you've got a couple of kids and a mortgage, you're going to change your point of view. Well, I am well past 29, but I've just worked out that I probably am still a crazy, radical, left-wing socialist, and here's why. I was tweeting recently with a lovely gentleman in the United States who was clearly a very keen supporter of the Tea Party, and I'd made some passing, slightly sneering comment about crazy redneck Tea Party members. For those of you who are not aware of the Tea Party, I guess, is a loose conglomeration of mainly white, mainly middle-aged, mainly Republican people who are very, very keen supporters of a rather unusual woman from Alaska called Sarah Palin, and who believe that President Obama is, at the very least, an evil Muslim, and at the very worst, an actual incarnation of the devil on earth, and he has one aim and one aim only, and that's to utterly destroy the American way of life. They have what seems to me like an absolutely irrational fear of President Obama, a fear that he is going to take over their lives, that he's going to force them into a socialist republic, that he's going to destroy everything that America stands for, that, you know, it's an incredible obsessive fear and an insane frenzied hatred of a guy who was democratically elected to be the President of the United States. And from speaking as someone from outside the United States, it strikes me as slightly odd. I mean, he's trying to force them to have medical care for everyone in the United States as opposed to the privileged few. He's trying to force them into the most pathetically meagre reductions in the country's carbon output. I mean, there's nothing else, there's no other way of describing it, is insane communist revolution. That's all it can be described as. So when I hear about this, I am a little bit confused. I mean, he doesn't sound that scary to me. I mean, the guy who was in the White House before him, yes, I was scared of him. Very, very scared, and probably for very good reason. I mean, he started a war that now everyone, even the people who initially supported it, it was probably a mistake to destabilize a country in the Middle East and kill hundreds of thousands of people for what? We're not quite sure. I've just been listening to Tony Blair's autobiography as an audiobook, read by Tony Blair. Very, very interesting. And he basically has spent 1.5, maybe 2 hours of this book trying to explain why he supported President Bush in the invasion of Iraq, and it still doesn't make sense. But the one important thing about this guy is, no matter what happens, no matter what you feel about him, no matter whether you agree with him or fear him, one thing's for certain, if he really screws up, he's out on his ear. There'll be an election and he'll lose it, and that's it. It's good night Vienna from President Obama. This is what really scares me. Who is this dude? I don't know. Some of you might recognize him. I haven't got a clue who he is. What I do know is he's a corporate boss. He is the boss of some corporation. I didn't vote for him, you didn't vote for him, no one we know voted for him, and yet he is incredibly powerful. Who is he? And one thing's for certain, if he screws up, if he makes a right mess of the world we live in, if he costs us hundreds of millions and billions of dollars because of his greed and his stupidity and short-sightedness, he's still there. He still gets his bonus. He still gets paid. He still makes more money while we bail him out. And why? So this, it seems to me, is the new divide between what was called left-wing and what was called right-wing. Basically now, if you're right-wing, you're terrified of big government and the fact that they could take over your lives and destroy everything that you believe in. If you're left-wing, you are terrified of the unknown face of the big corporation. It's nothing new, it's just a different way it's been taken on board. You're scared of the big corporations because of the influence they can have over governments. I don't see governments as big. I see governments as being bullied and coerced and lobbied and levered and bribed and corrupted by big corporations. And what do big corporations do? They keep going all the time through hundreds of different administrations in this country, in Europe, in Africa, in the Far East, in the Middle East, in America. The corporations are constant and constantly getting more powerful. They've got a lot more powerful in my lifetime, and the governments are crumbling and falling apart, and the coalitions are splitting, and there's votes and they can't quite get it together, and they get caught doing stuff and they're embarrassed and there's scandals, and the corporations just keep on going. When did you last hear about a scandal, like a sexual scandal or a bribery scandal or a theft scandal about a corporation? I'm sure they go on, but we don't hear about them. And what I'm talking about here isn't a conspiracy theory or some crazy covert operation where there's 16 men sitting in a concrete bunker with maps of the world around the sides and Tom Cruise is about to break in through the ceiling and machine gun them all. No, I mean things like the Bilderberg group, the grouping of corporate bosses and world leaders that meets secretly in hotels somewhere and plans the future of the world, and it's a huge Jewish conspiracy of Muslims, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm not really into that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the very overt, open, public, highly well-funded lobbying of governments, the big corporations that spend literally billions of pounds lobbying governments, of it trying to influence politicians, of sucking up to politicians, trying to get them to change the way they vote or introduce new laws that benefit them. Perfectly legitimate part of the democratic process as we know it now. There's nothing covert about it at all. It's very, very public. Anyone can find out about it. Exxon recently announced that they'd spent $1.4 billion on public relations exercises and lobbying. That's completely legitimate. There's nothing illegal or wrong or covert or secretive or hitmen hiding behind concrete walls shooting people. None of that. They're trying to influence the government to not introduce legislation that would restrict the sale of fossil fuels. I mean, that's completely legitimate and there's nothing wrong with it at all. And I totally support that. But what I would think we should all question is, who are these people and what do they know and how much do they know and how much do they get paid for knowing it and how much do they pay other people for not telling you that they know it and they're using that as a leverage tool? And the reason I've realised I'm left-wing is because he really scares me and he really doesn't. And that's probably the best way of telling. That's a good way of judging. If you get a big picture of him up on your screen and a big picture of him, flip between the two and see which one frightens you most. And then you can tell from that whether you're left or right. Well, that's enough amateur political theorising from me. If you have been, thank you for watching.